Hey folks, the usual jazz hands. Hi folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you may be joining me from. My name is Cheryl Larkison. I am your host on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong Rainbow Edition. It is week 16. Can't do it on my hands anymore. We're week 16 for the Rainbow Edition. I'm so excited. I'm always excited. I'm kind of a geek that way. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing okay. Feels very spring-like out. My son is in the next room. Did go to school, but then he came home. So it's a couple minutes late if you were looking for me because everything got delayed. So be it. It's the way it is. It's life. It's not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. Maybe you think it's a big deal, but I don't. And I hope that I can influence you to not stress about some of that stuff. So, because it's sewing, it shouldn't be stressful at all. Here's our block for today. Nice gradation with the arcs going on. Went a little bit back to sort of that classic rainbow kind of look with the arcs. I just felt like it needed it at this point in the quilt top. Let's put that one down here. It just felt like it needed that horizontal sort of aspect in amongst all these other ones. So even though it's pretty similar to what we did a couple of weeks ago, meaning that one, which I put sideways there, horizontal there, is similar in that we're still doing those layered curves and everything, but this time we're doing arcs. I just felt like the design needed it here. So if you're following along and making all the blocks in order and putting them together in order, that's why I chose this. If you're freewheeling it, great, put it wherever it fits and have fun with it. In contrast to the previous one, so this one, I'm gonna lay mine out with the white at the top and the black at the bottom. So that's just the way I chose to do my rainbow because that's what fit over here. I think for the colored version up here, I think I will go with, I'm going to go with pink at the bottom and purple at the top because I like kind of this play of purple sort of surrounding the checkerboard block. So I think that's what I'll do. So let's get to sewing. You'll hear me chit-chat enough. You know you always do. Let's flip the camera around. There are the ladies. I had it turned a little bit. There are lovely ladies. Let's turn you down to the cutting table. I'm just gonna adjust this ever so slightly because I think that's, yeah, I'm seeing that. So I could fart around with this, or we can just proceed and we'll ignore that little bit there. If I lay a piece of fabric on it, is it better? Probably not. It just changes the color of it and makes it bigger. So apologies. I don't want to waste time messing around with that. But I've got my tripod set up for something for horizontal. So it's showing this way. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. So what do we need for this block? We need the rotary cutter. Don't really need the ruler until the end. And you need strips of your rainbow fabric. I recommend pressing them before you start. Whenever we're cutting these curves, it's actually pretty good to have a flat piece. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that, but you want to give those a good pressing because all of those wrinkles will be in there. And those are obviously not in rainbow order. Again, no one says you have to go in rainbow order for this. You could totally play around with it. I think I'll stick to rainbow order. Okay, so remember we were talking about what I wanted on the top, and I said I wanted the purple. So if my purple's on the top, then I'm gonna have blue, then green, and yellow, orange, and pink. That's the order I want to work in. The reason that this is actually a little bit important is from a construction point of view. We actually want to work from the top down. It doesn't mean you have to end up putting that on the top. Just thinking about your block though, with that arc coming around this way, like that, we're going to be working from the top down to make that block. So I'm going to take my first two pieces and I'm going to turn them in a way that's easier for me to cut, right? Having them this way, just it's awkward for me to cut. You never want it to be awkward when you're cutting. You want it to be as easy as possible. And you're going to layer those so that they overlap. See how they overlap, right? I've got the blue over the purple a little bit because we're going to cut both of them together at the same time. You know me and curves, this is how we're going to do it. I want to make sure, you know, that I know where my ends are. So you could do like a little marker. Take note of where on the ruler. I'm just going to do a marker so that I know my purple ends there. And down here I'll start and just have that there. And we're going to go and we're just going to cut, you know, it's going to be an arc in our thing, but because I'm cutting it essentially vertically, it's kind of like a bracket. Let's think of it that way. So we're going to discard, well, make sure I didn't cut all the way through there. So put the little bits in the scrap pile. If they're really skinny, there's no need to keep them. Right, but I've got those. We'll see what I do with those. And so we have these two pieces, right? Pretty straightforward. We want to sew this together. I cut it sort of left to right because I'm right-handed. It's the way my brain works. Lefties, you might cut from right to left on that bracket. So I've got a closed bracket, the closing bracket. You might have the opening bracket. However, when we sew, I actually want to reverse this. Just because I find it easier to sew with the concave part on the bottom and the convex on top. So I'm going to flip them and then flip them right sides together like this. Remember, we're sewing curves. I'm only worried about this top inch at first. Let's go over to the machine so you can see. So as I go, set your machine to stop with the needle down if you can. And then as I go, I'm going to guide my two pieces together, only worrying about matching up as I go. Be careful not to stretch or pull. You may need to stop and adjust your presser foot or the fabric under your presser foot. You may not. Every machine is different, and it will also depend on the curve that you cut. So that's the first one right there. I'm going to take you over here because we do want to press this. Right? I'm going to press, they tend to want to go towards, for lack of a better term, the bottom one, or what is inside the bracket. And you definitely want to press as you go. I need a little bit more water in there, which I don't have, so that's all right. We'll use flatter at the end of the day. But give it a decent press as you go, and then we're going to repeat the process 4 more times. It's pretty straightforward. You can vary the width of your strip, right? You could make the blue part quite thin. Any of them you could make quite thin. In this case, when I'm layering, I can see my blue through the green, so it works. I'm not looking to necessarily perfectly echo the first cut that I did. If it varies a little bit, that's just going to make your block a little more interesting. So we're not worried so much with these being perfect parallel lines. Just have some fun with it. So again, I want to sew that way. This is probably one of the easiest ways you can do the curves because they're so gentle. The biggest thing you can mess up on, and not really, I mean, nothing is unfixable, but if you pull your fabric quite a bit, you can stretch it out and it'll make it a little bit wonky. The other thing you can do is when you're at sort of the apex of the curve, if you're finding you need to adjust, doing a hard pivot there is something you want to avoid. So if you're feeling you need to adjust, kind of do 1 or 2 stitches with a tiny little movement, then do a couple more with another movement. So rather than that hard pivot, you're kind of spreading out the pivot through a few stitches. That's all. And we just keep building it up, right? There's 3 pieces. Usually at about halfway, I just want to take a quick measurement, see where I'm at. I know how tall I want my block. Obviously it's not going to be as tall, you know, the green is going to be shorter, but it gives me an idea. Do I need to have bigger pieces, or can I go a little bit skinnier on one of these and have some fun with it? So I think I'm going to go a little bit skinnier with my yellow. So how do we do skinnier or wider pieces? That's just going to come down to 2 things. One, where you place the fabric when you layer it for the cut, and then the arc that you actually cut. If you cut a very, very gradual arc, it's going to leave you a wider piece. If you cut a stronger arc, it's going to leave you a bit narrower. So I'm going to layer it over a little bit closer to this part of my green so that my arc is maybe not quite as large. You could even get this close and kind of have a very different sort of thing. I'm going to go like that. And I'm just going slow, watching my fingers, of course. And I'll go with that. So my green's not quite as big. Flip them over, especially once I sew them together. And then I'm going to sew down that seam. There we go. We're just going to have 2 more to do. Did I tell you guys my car died last week? Can't remember if it was on Monday and I told you, or if it was on Wednesday. I knew it was one of those 2 days because my daughter was driving it when it died. So I have no car at the moment. We do have access to another vehicle, a work truck, so my husband's been driving that and I've been driving his car, but my car is no longer. So looking for that silver lining in the story, hey? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the next one. You can see with this piece that I've got here, when I cut it off of the folded fabric here, I have this little kind of wedge. I'm just leaving it there. It's not important to cut that off because it will get cut off in the next round of things. So my yellow piece is a little bit narrower. That's another way that you can play with the sizes, is if any of your strips that you started with are a little bit narrower, you're not going to have as many options for that piece. So I'm going to go like that. Make sure I've cut the whole way through. I missed that little bit just at the beginning. It happens. Right, so now my yellow, you can see, is not going to be as wide. That's all good. I like that variation. Who wants it to be same? If we wanted samey kind of stuff, well, we wouldn't be doing improv work, would we? I find myself lately really noticing that I say work when I'm talking about my quilting, and I don't like that, to be honest. Right? Like, I worked on this quilt today, I worked on that quilt today, or I've got some work to do in the sewing room. And even though for me as a professional, there is an element of work to it, I gotta say, I don't really like that I'm referring to that. So I'm really working on I'm really trying to change my mindset around that and the language that I use. Michelle, what did you say here? You have the relaxing yoga voice going today. Oh, well, thank you. It's not intentional. I can tell you that. Maybe I'm just feeling relaxed for the first time in a while. I don't know. I'll go with it though. I won't try to change it at this point. So just before I sew on this last piece, I just want to double check, where am I in terms of height of my block? I know that my width is good because I cut my strips about 3/4 to an inch longer than I needed. It's not going to shrink up like when we do a quarter circle curve. The width in this case, the way you're seeing the block right now, the height, so the width doesn't really change too much in there, so you don't need a lot of extra there. So a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, more than enough, and will give you wiggle room for squaring up. However, we do want to make sure we have enough here. So if I give myself, okay, I'm at about 9 inches here and I need 10.5 overall. When I put this one on, right, I'm going to get shorter because seam allowances and all the rest of it. But how much shorter, right? Like if I really layer like this, right now just sitting like this is at 10.5 inches. So once I sew, it's going to be shorter. So I don't want to layer that much, right? I need to give myself room. If you're worried, you can always make this bottom rectangle a little bit bigger because you are going to use the straight edge of it, but just give yourself some of that wiggle room. Okay, so I'm happy with where that is. I'm going to go ahead and cut my arc. You'll notice when I'm cutting, I kind of want to hold behind the rotary cutter, especially at the beginning, but really all the way through, because it is going to want to shift. The cutter will pull it a little bit. So just be cognizant of that, help keep it flat, and we'll go from there. Okay, let's sew that last piece on. Pretty quick, hey? It's a fast block. I've always thought that a block like this, done in repeat and then using kind of a rail fence layout for that very traditional sort of quilt, could really have an interesting effect. A really, really interesting effect. Okay, I'm going to press this last one and then we'll see where we're at. We can square it up. So remember, I do love steam in my iron. I'm apparently out of water and there's none in the sewing room. So I am going to use my favorite flatter pressing spray. Always good to square up your block or trim your block when it's as flat as it can be. You want it to be nice and flat so that it's as accurate, right? If you're just having blocks of different sizes and they all want to go together, you still want them to be flat so that when you sew them together, things lie nicely. I'm squaring mine up to a standard size, so I really want to make sure they're flat so that I have as much accuracy as possible in the finished block. Okay, there she is, arcs. Let's do a quick square up of her. I'll double check that I have the sizes. I am great without too much waste or scraps, but in this case it'll be waste because none of the pieces are big enough. Remember, if you have some wiggle room, you can play with where it goes. All of that is an option. Now I'm right-handed, so remember I'm doing that hang loose, holding my ruler, and then holding my fingertips there, and I'm going to go from the bottom up and from the right across to the left. If you are left-handed, you will go from the bottom up on the left side and then left to right. Now that I have these two fresh cuts in a nice right angle, I can rotate my block so that those fresh cuts now are in the bottom corner. And then I can line my ruler up on that, do that hang loose, kind of hold again so that my ruler doesn't shift, and then trim across. And there we have it, the arcs block. Pretty simple, looks pretty good. I'm really, really happy with it. So I'm going to flip you around. We will say goodbye to the ladies for another week. And there I am. There's my yellow door. It makes me so happy. Wait till I can do these in my new studio, or playhouse as I'm starting to call it. Those of you who are newsletter subscribers will know what I'm talking about. And if you're not a newsletter subscriber, why aren't you? I sent out the Quilters Playcation newsletter just before I popped onto here, and I was talking all about playhouse dreams in it. So if you get the newsletter, you'll know what I'm talking about with respect here. If not, go sign up on quiltersplacation.com. But there is our arcs block. She's pretty. And I think she's going to fit wonderfully here on the quilt. Yeah. Look at that. That's definitely the right choice. Really happy with both versions today. Stuck with that rainbow order. It looks so good in this monochromatic. I really love when I do that gradation with the monochromatic version. And I really like this purple kind of play framing the block. Again, you don't have to be putting your blocks together in order. You don't have to be making all of the blocks. You don't have to be making any of the blocks, really. But if you are, this is something to play in. Now that we're getting more blocks, we're going to start seeing these sort of ways that the blocks can interact. And I'm thinking about that. For example, also on my monochromatic version, these little spots of color. My oldest daughter loves this quilt. My youngest daughter hates it. And so we know who will be getting what in there, but my youngest daughter can't stand these little bits of color because and she really doesn't like the quilt at all. There's no symmetry in it, and it's not ordered. Fine, that's her thing. But my oldest loves these little bits of color, and even she clued in. She's like, oh, you did red and then you did orange. Are you going to do yellow next? I'm like, yes, I am. So yeah, she's going to have that, but I'm going to have to put the pop of yellow somewhere over here just to balance out where they are. So we won't see that for a while, but it'll be a nice kind of mustardy yellow going on there. That's it for week 16. Half an hour in. I hope you're having a good time. Any gossip, any news you guys want to share? I'm here for it. Always. You may not want to share gossip this way, which is fair, which is totally fair. You're most welcome, Mindy, and everybody else. I'm so glad that I can be here to share all of this with you. Speaking of sharing, remember you can post anything that you do on Instagram or blogs or wherever you may post your stuff. I'm not on Facebook, so if you post there, I will have no clue. But feel free to post and share there as well. But if you do, use the hashtags Quilters Playcation, QP Adventure Sewalong 2024, or just the QP Adventure Sewalong. I like to share as much as I can see out there. There's some really, really fun versions going on, really interesting color choices, and it just goes to show you that a rainbow means so many different things. And I really, really like that in there. So that's me, Cheryl Larkison, with week 16 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. I hope to see you soon. I hope to have fun with you again. Terry says she's loving making slabs that she learned on the Sew Squad. Oh, thank you, Terry. I had a blast. That was a great. So those of you who don't know what the Sew Squad is, that is Libs Elliott's membership sort of club. Guild. I almost thought of it like a guild. It felt like a guild meeting a little bit there, and Libs hosted me to come in and teach everybody about making slabs. So we had a really good time on there. I feel like at some point in this quilt we will see a slab block with all of the scraps, because why not, right? We're gonna have scraps. I got to start thinking about incorporating a few more scraps here along the way, but I already know what next week's block is going to be. And actually, it could use scraps. So let's have fun with it. I just need to test it because it's a little bit of a different technique for me. Exciting. We'll have fun with it. We'll see what happens. So again, Cheryl Larkison with the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. I hope you all have a lovely week. We will see you online. If you see me in person, stop and say hi too. All right, everybody, take care.